what the spine should look like. So, and actually, I'm going to grab it here. So I always have this hanging up in the background so I can grab it if I need to. So let's just, from the front, we want your spine straight up and down. That makes sense. We don't want to be shifted off to the side. A lot of what we're talking about today and what most people think about with a poor spinal posture is that hunched over position. But we still want to make sure that just like a building or a tower, we want it straight, because if it gets off to the side, that's what we call weak, especially with the spine. That's a weakening as well. So, again, another feature that God gave me is this nice long neck so I can demonstrate different postures. So it's even here if your head is shifted off to the side. So if you're looking, a global view, if your feet are about hip width, shoulder width apart, all right, in a nice relaxed posture, you look straight ahead. You can do this in the mirror to take a look at yourself too. And the points that we want to line up are your pubic bone, okay? We want that straight, in the middle of your feet. And if we go from the ground up, it's the ground, the middle of the pubic bone, middle of the chest, like your breastbone, your sternum, and then basically right above your nose, your forehead here, your glabella, it's called. And we want those points to line up. And they can get off to the side, and you could even drop a plumb line down, back in the old days, the plumb line to check people's posture. And if it's off, we know, okay, your spine, your posture is somehow distorted in some way. It's injured, it's weak, it's damaged in some way, and your body maybe is compensated it's compensated in that way. A lot of times it's a short leg. We find that quite a bit where one leg is shorter than the other, hips get rotated, knee goes in, your posture tries to fix it, but then you still end up in this off posture. And that's always surprising when I show people that, is like your head is shifted one way or the other. Posturally, we can look at that. X-rays, standing spinal X-rays, I'm always a big fan of, because that's the definitive way to see what your spine actually looks like. But if your head's off to the side, and I show them that, like, look in the mirror, they might see one shoulder than the other, but very rarely will you see your head tipped one way. What it will do is, if there's some sort of injury, you might end up like that. But one of the goals of your brain and your nervous system is to keep your eyes level with the horizon. So you might have it bent like this, but then it might rotate around. So it's hard for me to get in that without this. So you could be like this, and then it rotates back this way to get the eyes level, but your head and neck is still shifted off to the side. I just wanted to touch on that one, because it's not what people don't think about that too often, even though that's a huge problem. I mean, that was one of my huge problems of why I had migraines, is the chiropractor, I remember, he said, your head's on crooked. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
And Dr. Ray, just so you know, I think what I'm going to do is take a little clip of all of this and put it over onto YouTube. So if you want to do some visuals, feel free to do that.
Okay. All right, cool. And so here is the spine. All right. So now this is what I wanted to go over with the spine, is looking at it from the side, there should be 3 equal curves. But then also, if we're looking at just the posture, like the external posture, same thing like how we had those landmarks looking at you from the front, from the side, we want the pelvis lined up with the shoulder, lined up with the ear, the head. We don't want those, getting offline or outside that center of gravity. But on the inside, like the actual spine, so it can be a frustrating thing, posture, because you could have good posture from the outside, which is good. We want that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the actual curves of the spine needed to help protect the spinal cord and have it in a nice position where it's not stressing the spinal cord. I know I'm not saying, okay, don't stand up straight or anything like that. Have good posture from the outside. But I always encourage people to get spinal X-rays done from a specific chiropractor in order to evaluate this. So from the side, there's one curve in the neck, There's one in the mid back, and then there's one in the low back. Okay, well, the camera's there, and one in the low back, and these balance each other out. They're, to make it simple, each one is about 40 degrees. There's different orientations for each. Like, for example, the neck should have, it's like a half of a circle, whereas the mid back, it's like an ellipse where there's a little bit more curve at the top than there should be at the bottom. But then as it goes into the low back, it's opposite, where it's same thing, it's an ellipse, but there's more curve at the bottom of the low back, a little bit less up in the upper. And this has been shown through chiropractic biophysics research. That's what it's called, CBP. They've shown what the ideal curves are for these. So if the neck, for example, is too straight, or it loses the curve and it's less than 20 degrees, you're 18 times more likely to have chronic neck pain. Just with that. Now, that's just with neck pain, but think about the stress when you lose these curves, when there's distorted curves here, or even in the mid back. What a common one is that we talk about is that bent over position, that slouched, hunchback position. This is the position that the research has found that stresses the nerves, okay, but then also puts more stress onto the heart and the cardiovascular system, leading to more heart problems and even atherosclerosis, which leads to that significantly increased chance of death. I hate saying that word, but yes, increase of death. And it's been shown like even up to 15 years, independent of other issues that have been going on. So in that position, you're stretching the spinal cord. So remember, in the spinal cord, in the spine, you have the spinal cord, which is an extension of the brain. And think about it like a rubber band. And the rubber band we want relaxed. So when your spine has these natural, normal curves, and it's straight up and down from the front to back, the curves from the side, the spinal cord, or that rubber band, is relaxed. Now, all that energy, all that communication and the signals from the brain can get down through the spinal cord into every single cell, tissue, and organ that it's going to. But in a distorted, weakened posture, so that's a strong spine with those curves intact. So any weakening of that, especially that hyperkyphosis, that's that part of it where you're hunched, it's like stretching the rubber band. Now it gets tense, it gets tight, and it's not a great way to deliver these life-giving signals to your body, and then vice versa, your body being able to communicate with the brain. So that's how the spine should look. Your posture and spine should look.